The autumn rain hammered against the windows of Holloway Industries headquarters as Damien Holloway stared at the medical reports scattered across his mahogany desk. Each page was a countdown, a clinical documentation of his son's deteriorating condition. At 68, Damien had conquered markets, built empires, and accumulated wealth beyond most people's comprehension. Yet none of it meant anything now. His only son, Nathaniel, was dying. And worse than that, he had stopped fighting. The intercom buzzed softly. Damien pressed the button without turning from the window, where rain streaked down like tears against the glass. His assistant's voice came through, professional but tinged with concern. "Mr. Holloway, the investigator's report on potential candidates has arrived. Should I bring it in?" Damien closed his eyes briefly. 3 months ago, such a conversation would have been unthinkable. But desperation had a way of making the impossible seem reasonable. "Send it in, Martin, and prepare the legal documents we discussed." Across the city, in a cramped apartment in the Riverside district, Elena Russo was just finishing her shift notes. At 27, she had dedicated her life to nursing, finding purpose in easing the suffering of others. Her small living space reflected a life lived for others rather than herself. Medical journals were stacked beside donated furniture, and photographs of her late parents hung on walls that needed repainting. The exhaustion from a double shift weighed on her shoulders, but Elena felt the familiar satisfaction of knowing she had made a difference. Mrs. Keating had finally smiled today, a small victory after weeks of depression. Following her diagnosis, Mr. Yamamoto had taken his first steps with the walker. These moments, these small triumphs, they were why Elena had chosen this path, despite the long hours and modest pay. Her phone rang, just as she was brewing tea. The number was unfamiliar, professional looking. "Elena Russo speaking. Miss Russo, my name is Martin Chen. I'm calling on behalf of Damien Holloway. He would like to meet with you regarding an employment opportunity. The compensation would be substantial." Elena frowned, immediately suspicious. "I'm not looking for new employment, Mr. Chen. I'm happy at Mercy General. This isn't a traditional nursing position. Mr. Holloway specifically requested you based on your reputation for compassion and dedication. He's willing to offer $5 million just for the initial meeting." The number was so absurd that Elena almost laughed. "This has to be some kind of scam. Nobody pays $5 million for a meeting. I assure you this is legitimate. Mr. Holloway is prepared to transfer the money to an account of your choosing before the meeting even takes place. All he asks is 2 hours of your time to explain his situation." Something in the man's voice, a genuine urgency beneath the professional tone, made Elena pause. Against every instinct screaming this was too good to be true, she found herself agreeing to at least hear more details. 2 days later, Elena sat in the back of a luxury car heading toward the Holloway estate in the exclusive Lakeside Heights neighborhood. The $5 million had indeed been transferred to an account Martin had helped her set up with a reputable bank. Elena had already mentally allocated it to the pediatric wing at Mercy General and several nursing scholarships. Whatever this meeting was about, at least some good would come from it. The estate took her breath away. Sprawling gardens surrounded a mansion that looked like it belonged in a period drama. Marble fountains, perfectly manicured hedges, and architecture that spoke of old money and older traditions. Elena felt acutely aware of her simple dress and worn coat as a butler led her through halls decorated with artwork she suspected belonged in museums. Damien Holloway met her in a library that could have housed a small university's collection. He was imposing, silver-haired with sharp features that suggested a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. But his eyes, those held something Elena recognized from her years in nursing, the desperate fear of someone watching a loved one slip away. "Miss Russo, thank you for coming." Damien's voice was deep, controlled, but Elena heard the tremor beneath. "I'll be direct because I don't have time for games. My son Nathaniel is 29 years old and dying from a rare autoimmune condition. His organs are shutting down one by one. He has perhaps 8 months without aggressive treatment, possibly 3 years with it." Eleanor's professional instincts engaged immediately. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Holloway, but I don't understand what this has to do with me. Surely he has access to the best medical care available." "He does," Damien said, his composure cracking slightly. "But he's refused all treatment. Nathaniel has decided to die. Miss Russo, he won't fight. He's retreated into bitterness and anger, pushing away everyone who tries to help. His doctors say his mental state is as dangerous as his physical condition." Elena leaned forward, her heart aching for this father's pain. "What do his therapists recommend?" Damien's laugh was harsh. "He's refused therapy too. He's refused everything. That's why I'm making you an offer that will sound insane." He pulled out a thick folder and slid it across the table. "I want you to marry my son. Not a real marriage in the traditional sense, but a legal one. Live with him. Care for him. Give him something to fight for. If you can convince him to undergo treatment and he survives past 3 years, I'll give you $50 million. The room seemed to spin. Elena gripped the armrest of her chair, her mind refusing to process what she had just heard. "You want me to marry your son for money? That's completely unethical, Mr. Holloway." "I know how it sounds," Damien said, leaning forward with intensity. "But I've researched you extensively. Elena, you're not someone who chases wealth or status. Everyone at Mercy General speaks of your compassion, your ability to reach patients others have given up on. 6 weeks ago, you spent an entire night with a dying man because he was alone and afraid. You held his hand and sang to him until he passed peacefully." Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Mr. Chen reminded me of my father. It was instinct, not heroism." "Exactly," Damien said, his voice thick with emotion. "That instinct, that genuine care, that's what Nathaniel needs. Not someone who wants money or social position, but someone who actually sees value in saving lives. Someone authentic." Before Elena could respond, Damien continued, "You can refuse. The $5 million is yours regardless. But I'm asking you to at least meet Nathaniel before you decide. See what I'm talking about. Then make your choice." Elena spent 3 sleepless nights wrestling with Damien's proposal. The money was almost incomprehensible, enough to fund entire hospital wings, scholarships for hundreds of nursing students, and clinics in underserved communities. But marrying a stranger felt fundamentally wrong, transactional in a way that violated everything she believed about human connection and dignity. Yet one thought kept circling back, haunting her quiet moments. A young man, barely older than herself, had chosen to surrender to death. As a nurse, Elena had seen too many people give up when hope seemed distant. She had also seen how the right intervention, the right person, could reignite the will to live. What if she could make that difference? What if walking away meant watching someone die who might have been saved? On the 4th morning, Elena called Martin and agreed to meet Nathaniel before making her final decision. She owed it to herself and to the young man whose life hung in the balance to at least see the situation with her own eyes. The meeting was arranged in the mansion's sunroom, a glass-enclosed space filled with exotic plants and the gentle sound of a central fountain. Nathaniel Holloway sat in a wheelchair near the windows, his back to the entrance. Even from behind, Elena could see the weight loss, the way his expensive clothing hung loosely on a frame that had once been athletic. His dark hair needed cutting, and his posture spoke of someone who had given up on even basic self-care. "Nathaniel, this is Elena Russo," Damien said gently, his usual commanding tone softened by paternal concern. "She's agreed to meet you." When Nathaniel turned his wheelchair around, Elena had to work to keep her expression neutral. Despite the ravages of illness, he had been handsome once. Sharp features, intelligent dark eyes, a strong jawline. But those eyes held something that struck Elena more than any physical deterioration, a profound emptiness. The look of someone who had already departed this world in spirit, if not in body. "Another audition from my father's desperate scheme," Nathaniel said, his voice dripping with bitter sarcasm. "Let me guess the pitch. Marry the dying heir, play the devoted wife, collect your fortune when I'm gone. How much is he offering you?" 10 million, 20, 50 million, Elena said quietly, refusing to play games. And you're half right. That's what he's offering. But I haven't accepted. Nathaniel's eyebrows rose slightly, the first genuine reaction she had seen. Why not? It's more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. A few years of inconvenience for generational wealth seems like an easy choice. Aylana stepped closer, meeting his gaze directly. Because I'm a nurse, and nurses don't use people. We care for them. Your father thinks I can help you want to live again. But I can't do that if you've already decided dying is easier than fighting. Something flickered across Nathaniel's face, anger perhaps, or maybe surprise at her directness. Help me want to live. Look at me, Miss Russo. I'm a walking corpse. My immune system is attacking my own organs. Every day I wake up weaker than the day before. My father is delusional if he thinks a compassionate stranger can change that reality. Maybe he is, Aylana acknowledged, pulling a chair closer and sitting down so they were at eye level. Or maybe you're so focused on your suffering that you can't see past it anymore. I've watched a lot of people die, Mr. Holloway. Some go peacefully, accepting their time has come. But others, they give up months or years before they actually have to. They choose death because fighting seems too hard. Nathaniel's jaw tightened, and Aylana saw real emotion break through his carefully maintained indifference. You have no idea what I'm going through. You're right. I don't, Aylana said softly. But I know what it's like to lose people you love. I know what it's like to feel powerless while someone slips away. My mother died of cancer when I was 19. Watching her suffer, watching her fade, it broke something in me. But you know what she told me in her final days? She said the suffering was bearable because she wasn't alone. Because someone cared enough to sit with her through the darkness. Nathaniel looked away, but Aylana saw his hands grip the wheelchair arms more tightly. That's a touching story, but my situation is different. I'm not some inspiration for your nursing compassion. I'm not here to make you an inspiration, Aylana replied. I'm here because your father is desperate and because somewhere under all this anger and bitterness, there might be a person who still wants to live but doesn't know how to ask for help. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the fountain's gentle burbling. When Nathaniel finally spoke, his voice was quieter, stripped of some of its defensive sarcasm. Why would you even consider this? You could take the $5 million he already gave you and walk away. Why risk getting involved in this mess? Aylana considered her answer carefully. Because I became a nurse to help people who are suffering, and right now, you're suffering in ways that go beyond physical illness. If I walked away without at least trying, I'd be abandoning everything I believe about what it means to care for someone. Nathaniel studied her face for a long moment, seeming to search for deception or hidden motives. When he spoke again, there was less hostility in his tone. You're either incredibly naive or genuinely kind. I can't decide which. Maybe both, Aylana said with a small smile. I've been called worse. For the first time, something that might have been a smile touched Nathaniel's lips, gone almost before it appeared. All right, Miss Russo, you want to play nurse to the dying heir. Here's what you need to know. I'm not some project for you to fix. I'm not going to suddenly see the light and embrace life because you say inspirational things. If you agree to this arrangement, you're signing up 4 months of watching me deteriorate while my father pretends there's still hope. Aylana nodded slowly. And if I agree, what will you do? Will you at least consider the treatment your doctors recommend? Nathaniel's expression hardened again. That's not part of any deal. I won't be manipulated into prolonging this nightmare. Then we have a problem, Aylana said, standing up. Because I won't marry you just to watch you die. If I agree to this, it's with the understanding that you'll give treatment a genuine chance, not for your father, not for the money, but because your life has value even if you can't see it right now. My life has value. Nathaniel's laugh was harsh. To whom? My father, who sees me as an extension of his empire. To you, a stranger who wants to play savior for $50 million. To me, yes, Aylana said firmly. Not because of money, but because I've seen too many people die before their time. Some couldn't be saved, But you have options, treatments, a chance. Refusing them isn't brave, Mr. Holloway. It's just sad. She turned to leave, her heart heavy, but her conscience clear. She had tried. If Nathaniel was determined to choose death, she couldn't stop him. Wait. Nathaniel's voice stopped her at the door. Eleanor turned back. He was looking at her with something different in his eyes now. Not hope exactly, but perhaps curiosity. You really believe that? That my life is worth fighting for? I do, Eleanor said simply. The question is, do you? Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know anymore, but maybe, if you're willing to stay, I could try to find out. Eleanor felt something shift in the air between them, a tentative beginning of connection. She walked back to the wheelchair and knelt down beside it, meeting Nathaniel's eyes at his level. If I stay, we do this honestly. No games, no manipulation. You agree to treatment, and I agree to be here through whatever comes. Not as hired help, but as someone who genuinely wants to see you survive this. Nathaniel studied her face again, and this time Eleanor saw the walls begin to crack, just slightly. Why do you care so much? You don't even know me. Because everyone deserves someone in their corner, Eleanor said softly, especially when they've given up on themselves. For the first time since entering the room, Eleanor saw genuine emotion in Nathaniel's eyes, vulnerability breaking through the protective shell of cynicism. All right, Miss Russo, you have a deal. I'll try the treatment, but don't expect miracles. Eleanor smiled, feeling hope kindle in her chest. I'm a nurse, Mr. Holloway. I see miracles happen when people decide to fight. Let's find out what happens when you decide to live. The first month at the Holloway estate was harder than Eleanor had anticipated. Nathaniel had agreed to treatment, but his cooperation came with walls of resistance. He was polite but distant, answering questions with minimal responses and spending most of his time alone in his suite. The medical team came daily, administering treatments that left him exhausted and sick. Through it all, Nathaniel maintained his emotional distance, as if determined to prove that Eleanor's optimism was misplaced. Eleanor refused to give up. She brought books and read aloud when Nathaniel was too tired to hold them himself. She learned his favorite foods and worked with the chef to create meals he could tolerate despite the treatment's side effects. When nightmares woke him, she sat in the chair by his window until he fell back asleep, never asking questions, just being present. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday afternoon, 6 weeks into the arrangement. Eleanor found Nathaniel in the garden, something he had avoided since she arrived. He was standing, not sitting in the wheelchair, leaning heavily on a cane, but standing nonetheless. The autumn sun caught his hair, and for a moment, Eleanor could see the man he had been before illness took hold. You're standing, she said softly, not wanting to startle him. Nathaniel turned, and Eleanor was shocked to see tears on his face. The treatment is working, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Dr. Reeves said my latest tests show improvement. My kidney function is stabilizing. Eleanor felt her own tears well up. That's wonderful, Nathaniel. I'm so happy for you. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression had changed. Why are you crying? You should be celebrating. Your investment is paying off. The words should have stung, but Eleanor heard the question beneath them, the vulnerability he was still learning to express. I'm crying because I'm happy you're getting better, because watching you fight has been one of the most inspiring things I've ever witnessed. Nathaniel took a hesitant step toward her, his movements still weak, but determined. I need to tell you something, Eleanor. These past weeks, watching you care for me, refusing to give up even when I was horrible to you, it's changed something. I started the treatment for my father, to honor our agreement, but now I'm continuing it for a different reason. Eleanor's heart began to beat faster. What reason? Because I want to see what happens next, Nathaniel said, taking another step closer. Because for the first time in 2 years, I'm curious about tomorrow. Because you've shown me that life might still have moments worth experiencing. Before Eleanor could respond, Nathaniel swayed slightly, his strength not yet fully recovered. She moved quickly to support him, her arm around his waist, his weight leaning against her. They stood like that for a moment, closer than they had ever been, and Elena felt the steady beat of his heart against her shoulder. "We should get you inside," she said softly, but made no move to step away. In a moment, Nathaniel replied, his voice quiet. "Let me just stand here with you a bit longer. It feels good to feel something other than pain." Over the following weeks, something subtle shifted between them. Nathaniel began seeking Elena's company, asking her to stay when the medical team left, talking about his life before illness, his dreams and fears. Elena found herself sharing more too, stories about her parents, her reasons for becoming a nurse, her own struggles with loss and purpose. One evening, as they played chess in the library, Nathaniel reached across the board and took Elena's hand. She froze, looking up to meet his eyes. The emptiness that had haunted them when they first met was gone, replaced by something warm and alive. "I need to tell you something," Nathaniel said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "This arrangement, this marriage on paper, it's become something I never expected. You've become someone I never expected." Elena felt her breath catch. "Nathaniel, you don't have to say anything. I'm here regardless, but I want to say it," he insisted, his grip tightening slightly. "I'm falling in love with you, Elena, not because of the arrangement or the contract, but because of who you are. Your compassion, your strength, your refusal to let me give up. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere between your stubbornness and your kindness, I stopped just wanting to survive and started wanting to live. With you." Elena felt tears stream down her face. She had known for weeks that her feelings had evolved beyond professional care, beyond the terms of their agreement, but hearing Nathaniel's voice, what she had been afraid to acknowledge, made it real in a way that terrified and thrilled her. "I love you too," she whispered. "I tried not to. I told myself this was just a job, just helping someone through a difficult time, but you've become so much more than that." Nathaniel stood, still unsteady, but determined, and pulled Elena to her feet. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the tremor from his condition. "Can I kiss you, not because of any contract or arrangement, but because I want to, because you've given me back my life, and I want to share it with you?" Elena nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging her throat. When Nathaniel's lips met hers, it was tender and careful, a kiss that spoke of new beginnings and hard-won hope. Elena wrapped her arms around him, supporting him even as she surrendered to the moment. The crisis came 2 months later, sudden and terrifying. Nathaniel collapsed during breakfast, his body seizing as his immune system launched another attack. The medical team rushed him to the private hospital wing Damien had established in the estate. For 3 days, Elena never left his side, holding his hand through treatments, whispering encouragement when he was conscious, and praying when he was not. On the 3rd night, Nathaniel's fever finally broke. Elena was dozing in the chair beside his bed when she felt his hand squeeze hers. She jerked awake to find him watching her with tired but clear eyes. "You stayed," he said, his voice hoarse, from the breathing tube that had been removed hours earlier. "Of course I stayed," Elena said, fresh tears falling. "Where else would I be?" Nathaniel smiled weakly. "You could have left. The contract doesn't require you to sit vigil during medical crises. You could have taken your money and walked away from this mess." Elena leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. "Stop talking about the contract. Stop talking about money. None of that matters anymore, Nathaniel. I'm here because I love you. Because my life is better with you in it. Because watching you fight has taught me more about courage than anything else ever could." Nathaniel's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I almost died, Elena. The doctors said another hour and I might not have made it. All I could think about was how angry I was. Not at death, but at the idea of leaving you, of not getting more time with you." Elena kissed his forehead gently. "But you didn't leave. You fought. And you're still here. We're still here, together. Marry me, Nathaniel said suddenly. Not on paper, not because of my father's arrangement. Marry me because you want to, because I want to spend whatever time I have left being genuinely, completely yours. Elena laughed through her tears. We're already married, remember? The legal ceremony 3 months ago. That was a contract signing, Nathaniel said, managing a weak smile. I'm talking about a real wedding. With vows we choose ourselves, with family and friends, with you in a beautiful dress and me promising to love you for whatever forever we get. Elena kissed him then, tasting salt from both their tears. Yes, she whispered against his lips, yes to all of it. 6 months after that night, Nathaniel stood at the altar without assistance, his color restored, his strength returning day by day. The experimental treatment had pushed his condition into remission, buying them years that had seemed impossible when they first met. Elena walked down the aisle in her mother's restored wedding dress, her eyes locked on the man who had taught her that love could grow in the most unexpected soil. Damien Holloway stood as best man, tears streaming unashamedly down his face as he watched his son marry the woman who had saved him in every way that mattered. The 50 million sat untouched in Eleanor's account, and neither of them cared. They had found something worth infinitely more than money, a genuine love born from compassion, tested by hardship, and proven true by choice. As Nathaniel kissed his bride, Elena knew that sometimes the most transactional beginnings could lead to the most authentic endings. They had both been saved, not by money or contracts, but by the simple choice to see value in another human being, to fight when surrender seemed easier, and to believe that love could bloom even in the darkest circumstances. Their story had begun with desperation and dollars, but it would continue with devotion and days built together, one precious moment at a time.